Hey, it's Dan with EUJuicers.com, coming to you as always from the heart of Europe. And in this video, we're going to take a look at Omega's newest juicer. This is their model MMV-702. This is S, the silver. And this is their Mega Mouth vertical juicer. This is Omega's first foray into the world of wide mouth juicers. What I want to do in this video is kind of disassemble this, show you the parts, show you what comes in the box. And then I just want to juice a few things and see how it performs, see how easy and fast it is to use. I'll do my usual, which is carrots. I'll actually have a kilo of carrots and we'll measure the yield from that. Then I've got apples and then some mixed greens. So let's take a look at this. First of all, I can tell you this comes from South Korea. It's, as with all Omega products, it's very well produced. It's solid, weighs about 7 kilos, has a nice motor, 240 watts, which you need, especially with a wide mouth. You're going to be feeding a lot of ingredients in there and you want a lot of torque. So this AC brushless motor should provide some of that. We'll see that when I juice. Now, a question we get are these wide mouths really useful? Is this just a gimmick or is this something that is the wave of the future? We'll see when I juice. The reason there haven't been wide mouths so common up until this point, it started about 2 years ago. Kuvings had their wide mouth vertical juicer, was because of safety regulations. Safety regulators don't want kids or adults like me reaching their hands in, hey, something got stuck in there and oop, you get hit by the auger, you get some damage to your fingers. So the way they get around this is by putting some sort of barrier. In this case, there's a blade, and this prevents little hands from reaching all the way down into the auger, into the whole juicing assembly. I've also seen, I think only with the big commercial model, the Sauna 909 Horeca, has an actual trap door, so you can't get a hand around in there. One disadvantage I've found while using these is this is just more resistance. If you're putting in a small apple and thinking, hey, I didn't have to cut it. Well, you are cutting it, you're just cutting it on the inside. The apple goes in, it gets stuck at the blade, you get the pusher, and you've got to shove it through, and it's going to bisect that apple. So that's the top unit, and it's 76 millimeters wide, about 3 inches. We're going to see later on, it's going to handle small apples fine, but bigger apples, I'm going to do Granny Smith, I bet you they're not going to fit. Let me take off the juicing bowl here and show you what we've got. Got your standard GE Ultim auger. It's not a twin wing, it's a standard single wing. Should perform fine. This unit operates at 60 RPM. And it does have a big wide opening. We'll see at the end if a lot of pulp accumulates in there or not. Here's the juicing screen. Like most modern verticals, it's got an integrated wiping system. This is going to spin while I juice, and it will tend to keep a lot of the pulp off of this fine stainless steel mesh. One thing I like is this big, heavy reinforcing band here, because this is the area that's going to get the most pressure when you're juicing. Everything's getting shoved down into here by the auger. You need this to hold it together. You don't want the juicing screen to break. Finally, here's the juicing bowl itself. I do like this big juice flap. This one's bigger than most, has a nice silicone seal in there. And of course, what you'll use this for, 2 things. First of all, if you keep it closed, you're not going to have drips coming down in case you forgot to put your juice container in there. Also, you can mix produce together. It'll stir, it'll mix in there, and you can make different recipes that way. However, you do tend to get slightly less yield if you've got the juice in there. So I recommend keeping this open unless you're making a recipe. And one thing I noticed, this does use kind of an older system of pulp ejection here. If I get a detail shot, unlike some models like the Omega's own VSJ, which is in Europe, the Sauna 808, the pulp has to go through 2 different channels. There's a little hole down here, and then it travels down here and makes a 90-degree angle. And okay, the advantage on these other models that I mentioned, the VSJ or the Sauna 808, there's a little silicone plug. You have to remember to plug that. But the disadvantage is fibrous things like celery, pineapples. Sometimes they'll get jammed using this older system. Again, we'll see when I juice. So let me show you how you put this guy back together. There's some red dots here that line up. You can see those here. It assembles real fast. And I want to show you what comes in the box besides these guys. Besides the juicing screen, there's two other screens included, which is kind of nice. You don't see that so often. This silver one here, this is a smoothie screen. Now, what's going to happen is it's going to filter everything here, but it's going to mash them all together, and it's kind of like blending. You can make a recipe like almond milk, bananas, spinach, things like that, and it'll make a smoothie. Now, if you're going to use harder ingredients like frozen fruits, nuts, things like that, that's where this guy comes in. This is the blank cone, and you could make peanut butter in there, cashew butter, frozen fruit sorbets, things like that. Besides that, you've got 3 different cleaning systems, which is kind of cool. Yeah, every juicer comes with a brush. This is what you're going to use to clean the juicing screens. It also has this little bottle brush, which you could use to get in places like here, and especially in the pulp outlet, because that's where you'll get the most clogs. And I like this a lot. This actually fits over a juicing screen, and it just snaps in place. And I found in my testing, it doesn't get all the pulp out, but it gets a lot of it. It makes your final cleaning a lot easier. Finally, there's a pulp container and a juice bowl designed to fit right under there. One thing to keep in mind, this unit is tall. This is about 45 centimeters tall. So if you're considering a unit like this, make sure, if you've got a low countertop, make sure to measure it, because remember, you not only need that, but you want some room above it, unless you've got a place you can pull it out, because you're going to be working above it here. So that's a look overall at it. What I want to do next is my yield test with carrots. What I've got is a kilo of carrots, and I'm just going to juice them and see how well it does. I like to do a yield test with every juicer we test now using carrots. A kilo of carrots, peeled, and then strained to see how much I get. So far, the current winner, outside of an Angel juicer, which is a whole different system, is the Sono 808 Omega VSJ, where I got about 530 milliliters. Of course, it's going to depend on the freshness of the carrots, if you soak them in water before, things like that. So there's going to be some variance. And we're filming this in early March. It's not carrot season. I had to hunt around and still didn't get the best carrots. So that can affect things as well. Now I can tell you, with these big guys, this is probably going to jam. In something with a smaller feed opening, you'd have to bisect these. You'd have to cut them into smaller pieces. Here the temptation is, hey, it's a big opening. Let's just throw stuff in. You can't do that. You got to feed them in slowly. What I'll probably have to do is cut these. But let's see. Let's start with a medium-sized, kind of fat carrot. Yep, and already notice. Even though it's got a lot of torque in here, it's a high-power motor, these big fat carrots really need to be cut up. Yeah, look at that. So that shows me I'm going to be doing some cutting. Something like this should be fine. And remember, don't overfeed. Don't be throwing carrot after carrot. Wait till the first carrot is finished. So what I'm going to do is cut this kind of at a diagonal. Should do better with that. Also, by cutting, you're going to get a higher yield. See, that's a big fat carrot, but cutting it in these diagonal strips, it was okay. I've opened this up. It should perform slightly better without the juice in there. Now I want to let it run until the last bit of pulp's out. So if the pulp's still coming out, that means it's still getting some juice, as we can see. Pulp feels fairly dry. Again, we'll see how the yield goes. That's probably enough. So notice, once I cut the carrots, there was no problem. But if you're trying to shove big, fat, whole carrots in, it's going to jam. So don't think your unit's broken. That's pretty much how all verticals are going to go. Even worse would be beets. If you put in red beets whole in here, man, this thing is going to stop right away. It's just too hard. It's too much, even with the torque in here, to cut through it. So make sure with beets, even with carrots, unless they're smaller carrots, that you chop them up a bit. So what I'm looking at right now looks like about half a liter of juice, but I want to strain it. See how much pulp was in there. There's a fair amount, not so bad. I would say probably a little more than in a 808 VSJ. I don't know if you can see that. There's maybe a tablespoon of pulp. And the yield I get, again, we're looking at the standard being about 530. I would say about 480. So not bad. Probably better than you'd get from a horizontal. This bottle's 350 milliliters, which means there'll be a little left over that I can drink straight from the container, being the caveman that I am, and give you my opinion on the flavor. Again, the flavor will depend on the quality of the carrots. These weren't the best carrots. I could have got a slightly more yield had I got fresher carrots, maybe some organic carrots, and also soaked them in water. Real smooth. After straining, real smooth. I don't taste any pulp. It's sweet. It's pretty good. Next up are apples. Let me clean this stuff, get this stuff out of the way, and let's see how apples do in the wide mouth. Now, one thing I noticed about those carrots is even with the jamming at the beginning, that was fast. Usually it takes me about 5 minutes to do a kilo of carrots. That took me about 3, so definitely has a speed advantage here. I talked about the wide mouth earlier. It's funny, you see in some ads, I see from some other juicers, you see a wide mouth and you see these big old apples inside. And I'm thinking, there's no way those apples got in there. That's photoshopped. So I want to take this off and show you. Here's a typical Granny Smith apple. That's my favorite apple for juicing. No chance. With the big ones like the Horeca commercial with the trapdoor, yeah, this probably would fit. So if you get a juicer like this, don't think you're going to throw big apples in. It's not going to fit. They're going to be bigger than 76 millimeters. But that's okay. You just cut them into bits. 4 pieces should do it. I don't think 2's going to fit. It might. This guy's just a little big. You could also use an apple slicer if you want to avoid seeds in your juice. Not a big deal. And this should go fast, and I don't expect any jams with this. It's going to squeak. Actually, I'm surprised it didn't. Granny Smiths have a texture to them that usually squeak with juicing. I noticed I had a bigger piece there. It got stuck. Finally, I get to use my pusher. Let me see if half an apple will fit. This was one of the smaller ones. Yep. One nice thing about this pusher it's got a grooved track that curves to one side. What this means is you get a little torque, so you're not just pushing down, but it's twisting as well. Notice how it went, I was pushing and then boom. That sound was, or no, that force was because of the blade in there that I mentioned before. It was stuck above the blade and I'm pushing and finally it cut through that blade. Again, it's best to feed these pieces, these quarters of apples one at a time. You don't want to overload the machine. So one thing I noticed with this, with the carrots and now with the apples, is this thing is fast. Even though I had to cut those apples up, it juiced those no problem. I had even half an apple in there going through really quick. So that's a big advantage. I'm not doing a yield test on apples. I just want to pour and kind of get a look at the color, the clarity of this juice. And I'll dump the extra here so that I can juice some greens. Again, I always recommend Granny Smith. Yeah, they're not the sweetest apple. They've got a kind of tart kick to them, but they juice really well. They give a good yield. Just make sure to drink your apple juice pretty soon. Apples tend to oxidize fairly quickly. Now this should be interesting. I usually just do spinach, but there's not a lot of, I'll put it on this side, not a lot of moisture content in spinach, obviously. I mean, this big bowl, what I think it weighed 200 grams, there's not much. So if I just did spinach, it would look a little weak, the yield. And what I'll do is use these romaine lettuce cores as kind of a pusher to help the spinach get through. Again, I'm not looking for yield, I'm just looking for ease of use at this point. Okay, that's nice. Super easy to feed, but will it get in there? That's the question. It's going in there all right, but it kind of is bunching up at the top. This is where a carrot would be super handy. I'll put a little more and then I'll stick some of that romaine in. Hopefully that'll help. Yeah, notice so far there's no spinach juice coming out yet. It's all just kind of sitting up here on the top. What if I put some of these in? Yeah, they still don't want to get in there. I can also put an apple in there. I would do a carrot, but I kind of like to show that really dark green juice. An apple's not going to affect that so much. Whereas a carrot, you'd get some weird mix of orange and green. Okay, let's see if this helps. Yeah, that's pushing some stuff in there. It's still, it's like this pusher could just be slightly longer, because even the apple is sitting up there right now, just kind of hanging out. Let me put this romaine core. It's juicing a little, but not a ton. And also something about this, if it had, maybe not slightly wider, but maybe like a silicone ring around it, like you see in some juicers. That way the things won't come up around the side and you get the full force. I'm just going to shove more of this in there. At some point, it's got to get in there without having to use a carrot. Yeah, how often are you going to juice just pure greens? Normally, that's part of a recipe. And like I said, I tried it yesterday with carrots and spinach, and it was no problem. Just alternating. But if you see, everything's just kind of hanging around there. So it was stuck there at the beginning, but now it seems to be finding its groove. I can see those spinach leaves just getting sucked in. And it's definitely nicer to feed it with this wide tube. I'm not getting spinach leaves everywhere. Now remember, that's not pure greens juice. There is a quarter of an apple in there. Another trick I'm doing is I'm folding these leaves over this way, fold them in half, and then flip it down. So I get more of a solid piece going in there. So after a little problem at the beginning, I don't know what was going on. That spinach just got stuck in there. It went fine. The apple kind of pushed things through. The romaine lettuce pushed things through. And even after that first batch, the spinach was sucking right in. So I'm not sure what was going on, but it worked well. And I especially appreciated that big feeding tube with the spinach because I didn't spill a leaf, I don't think, which is a new record for me. Again, I'm not doing a yield test. Just want to see how it looks. There's definitely a layer in there. That's from the spinach and then the lettuce, and a quarter of an apple as well. So performance-wise and functionality-wise, I'm impressed with this. Yeah, the yield on the carrots maybe wasn't as high as the VSJ, the 808, but the speed, if that's what you're looking for, something easy, it's definitely a plus. Now the other thing to factor in when you're talking about speed is cleaning. So I'm going to disassemble this, take it into the kitchen, and see just how long it takes to clean. All right, so I just cleaned it up. I was surprised it went real fast. Maybe that was due to the fact that I had just done leafy greens, and those don't tend to accumulate in the juicing screen like maybe a carrot would. But still, it went fast, and that green brush that goes around the outside, that was handy. That really got a lot of the pulp out. So overall, what do I think of the MMV-702 Mega Mouth Vertical? I like it. I think this is aimed at the person who wants to juice fast and easy, someone who wants convenient juicing. Yeah, the yield wasn't at the very top like some others, but it yielded pretty high amounts, and the taste was good too. So overall, I give it a thumbs up. I think it's well built. I think it's well worth checking out. If you want more detailed information, I've written a review of this juicer. It's available on our website. That's www.eujuicers.com. Go to the magazine section. There'll also be a link down below in the comments. And that'll do it for this one. See you next time. I'm Dan. Thanks for watching. No chance. So I want to take this off and show you. No chance. Show you. Here's a typical Granny Smith apple. No chance. That's my favorite apple for juicing. No chance. No chance. If you get a juicer like this, don't think you're going to throw big apples in. It's not going to fit. No chance. No chance.